Hello everyone. So today we'll be starting with the chapter Growing Up as Boys and Girls, and this is the chapter number 4 of grade 7th. So actually this chapter deals with that how the people, or specifically the boys and girls, they grow up. Since we differ from, like, we have some biological differences as well, so there will be difference and variations how the ones grow up. So leading to the chapter, we have an introduction about as a we'll be starting with the case study where it is given about that growing up in Samoa in 1920s. Basically, this paragraph is related to a case study where it talks about the class 7th Samoan child who is in his school uniform, and this basically talks about how the person or how he grows up in his own culture and his own differences. Basically, our growing up differs from culture to culture as well, and that's what makes individual differences between boys and girls. So leading to this chapter, we have Samau Islands, which is a part of a large group of small islands in the southern part of the Pacific Ocean. And this case study is related to the 1920s, and it shows that in this Samau Island, Samau society, basically the children, they do not go to school. This is their culture, and this is what they have specified, that the children over there, they do not go to school. They learned many things such as how to take care of children or do household work from older children and from adults. The main occupation, to be specific, is fishing, and this is what considered in Samau Island, Samau society, as an important activity on the island. And young people therefore learn to undertake long fishing expeditions, and they learn these things at different points in their childhood. If we compare ourselves with these children, what we see that we are kind of towards achievement oriented. Our society is, we can say that it is achievement oriented. From since our childhood, we focus on the growing up of boys and girls. We tend to educate ourselves, and we tend to educate our children in such a way that it leads to his or her successful life. Whereas in this case, the children, they do not go to school. They learn the things which are for their survival. So this difference basically origins from the culture. Their culture is different and our culture is different. So it is specified that as the babies, they could walk, so their mothers and adults, they no longer looked after them. Older children or their siblings, they looked after their younger siblings, and that is where they lead to their growing up. So that is how the growing up in this case and our case is different. Further on, cooking was done in for girls, for both boys and girls. They looked after the younger siblings, but by the time as a boy grows about 9 years old and so on, he joined the older boys in learning outdoor jobs like fishing and planting coconuts. Whereas girls, they serve another thing. They had to continue looking after small children or do errands for adult till they were teenagers. And once the girls, they become teenagers, they had much more freedom, and kind of they can go to fishing trips or work in the plantation as well. They can learn to weave baskets, and cooking, it was done in special cooking houses where boys were supposed to do most of the work while girls helped with the preparation. So till, we can say, till 9 years of both boys and girls, they could serve, they could look after their siblings. But as far as they grew up as a teenagers, their work defined, their work differentiate among them, right? Now, from where does this difference come? It comes from your culture, it comes from the society you live in. Now, there's a question given that in what ways do the experiences of Samao children and teenagers differ from our own experiences of growing up? Is there anything in this experience that you wish was a part of your growing up? So that is where, if we analyze, we can see that our society, what at present we see, we are achievement oriented. We tend to educate ourselves, right? Now there is a second case study as well, that says growing up male in Madhya Pradesh in the 1960s. Basically, this following case study is adapted from an account of experiences of being in a small town in Madhya Pradesh in the 1960s. From class 6 onwards, both girls and boys they went to separate schools, and the girls' school it was very designed very differently from the boys' schools because the needs of the girls and boys differ from each other in the sense of biological, right? They had a central courtyard where they played in total seclusion and safety from the outside world, where the girls a society being like says that girls had to be secluded, they had to be isolated, and they should not mingle up with the other outer world, right? So the boys school had no such courtyard, and our playground was just a big space attached to the school. Now, every evening, once school was over, the boys watched as hundreds of girls crowded the narrow streets. As these girls walked on the streets, they looked so purposeful. This was unlike the boys who used the streets as a place to stand around idling, to play, to try out tricks with their bicycles. Now, for the girls, the street was simply a place to get straight home, whereas the boys they could play idly, they could uh, chat over with their friends, and for girls it was just a pathway, it was just a platform to straight ahead to their homes. The girls went in groups, perhaps because they also carried fears of being teased or attacked. Even at present scenario, if we see in some of the rural areas or in the villages, we tend to see that the girls they tend to walk uh, in the crowds because they have the tendency to being attacked or to be teased by the people. Whereas in boys' case, this is not a situation at all. Now, after reading two examples above, what we see that we realize that there are many different ways of growing up. Often we think that there is only one way in which children grow up, but this is not the case. There are different ways where children grow up. This is because we are most familiar with our own experiences. If we talk to elders in our family, we will see that their childhoods were probably very different from ours. Even if you talk about your grandparents, if you talk about your parents, you will get to see that what kind of differences we possess in sense of growing up, right? Now we also realize that societies they make clear distinction between boys and girls. How can we realize that? Since childhood, girls they are considered they are said to be soft and kind of very nourished to the people, whereas boys they can be hostile and they can be assertive to any sense, right? Now, for example, given different toys to play with, this is the kind of example given here which actually distincts between boys and girls, that societies really make clear differences between boys and girls. It says that boys are usually given cars to play with and girls dolls. Why can't we do the vice versa? Why can't girls be given the cars and boys to be played with the dolls? Both toys can be a lot of fun to play with, of course, but why the girls and given dolls and boys cars? Basically, the distinctions between girls and boys are clearly made since birth as well. Toys become a telling of children that they will have different futures when they become men and women. If we think about it, this difference is created in the smallest and most everyday things. Even if you talk about certain games are there which girls are prohibited to play and boys can play. Since this distinction has been proved since independence or since in 19th or 20th century, but still this can be observed or can be victim in the societies in rural societies as well. So next comes that how girls must dress and what games boys should play. Girls they need to talk softly or boys need to be tough. So this is what we teach as a parent or we teach as a society to our kids. And that's what they basically learn from the culture. Now, in most societies, including our own as well, the roles of men and women play or the work they do, they are not valued equally. Men and women, they do not have the same status, and so this can be actually proved by the case study given. It's not exactly. Let us look at how this difference exists in the work done by men and women. we also make clear distinctions between men and women, how the work they perform or what they work they do. So there is a story given, my mother does not work. Let's read about it. Basically here, this story is a conversation between two between a daughter and her mother, right? So it says that, ma, we are going on a school excursion. Rosie ma'am needs volunteers. Can't you take a holiday from office and volunteer? So here the daughter says to her mother to take a holiday for her volunteering, as she is going on the school excursion. Her mother says that Hermes' mother always comes for excursion because she does not work. Here she is saying that, stating another example of her same classmate, says that Hermes' mother, she always comes for her excursion because she does not work. Now her Shonali's mother says that, how can you say that? You know that Jasprit auntie is up at 5 a.m. every day doing all the housework, but that's not real work, it's just the housework. Oh, that's what you think? Let's go over the house and ask Jasprit what she thinks. Now, as they both, girl and her mother goes to the Jasprit house, so what they see that, they convey to their mother that Harsharan and Shunali think that your wife is not a working person. But isn't that correct, Auntie? My mother is a housewife; she does not work. Basically, this story tends to reveal that how we ignore the work of a woman as a housewife. We just tend to think that that's just a normal work, that's their duty to perform. But let's understand her, that how does she work whole day, right? Now then, just breathe, why don't you relax and let them manage everything for a change. Okay. Next morning, so this is a basically story given, and that's what shows that valuing housework is indeed important. Now Hermes family, they did not think that the work Jaspreet did within the house was real work. This feeling is not unique to their families. Across the world, the main responsibility for housework and caregiving tasks like looking after the family and especially children lies with the woman. Why not with the men? Yes, we have seen that the work that women do within the home is not recognized as work. And yes, that if there is duty, that has to be recognized, but we tend to ignore their work, and that is what says the work that women do within the home is not recognized as work. It is also assumed that this is something that comes naturally to women. It therefore does not have to be paid for, and society devalues that work. This is not should be the case, that if someone is not being paid for a work, that should not be devalued. Now let's see another case, the life of domestic workers. Now, in the above story, what we saw that Hermes' mother was not the only one who did the household work. A lot of the work was done by Mangala, the domestic helper, and many homes, particularly in towns and cities, employ domestic workers. They do a lot of work like sweeping, cleaning, washing clothes and dishes, cooking, etc. Now, most domestic workers are women. We could actually see it that most of the domestic workers, they are women, and they does not have much value as well. A domestic worker's day begin as early as 5 in the morning and end late as 12 at night. They indeed, this shows that they do a lot of hard work, but still they are not equally paid for their work what they do. Their employers often do not show them as much respect. This is what Melanie, she is a domestic worker, who had to say about her experiences of working in Delhi. So basically, this is an account of Melanie, who is a domestic worker, and she shares her experience being a domestic helper. Now what she says that this was his her first job with a rich family that lived in a three-storied house. Now the Ma'am Sahib refers to the landowner, the lady who actually owns the land, owns the house, was a very strange, as she would shout to get any work done. Basically, we could actually see in our present scenario as well, the domestic workers, they are not valued for their work and even not given much respect. So the landowners or the mem sahib, they actually would shout to get the work done. And Melanie worked in the kitchen. There were two other girls who did the cleaning as well, so their work was actually separated, and the two other domestic helper also came in her house to help the Melanie. Now, our day, she specifies that their day actually would begin at 5 o'clock, and for breakfast, we would get a cup of tea and two dry rotis. We could never get a third roti. In the evening, when I cooked the food, the two other girls would beg me to give them an extra roti. I would secretly give it to them and make an extra one for myself. So, this is what Melanie says, that how she would be refused to give in a third roti as her breakfast. And when she prepares the food for the evening, and when the other two girls who actually would beg for the roti would be, then Melanie gives them as a secret one, so that landowner could not get into it. Now, of course, they will feel so hungry after working through the day. So we could not wear chappals in the house as it was prohibited according to the landowners. And in the winter, our feet would swell up with the cold. I used to feel scared of the Ma'am Sahib, but also felt angry and humiliated. Did we not work all day? Did not. So this is the question that basically Melanie is raising to our that despite of working whole day, we could not get anything. We even do not get the equal amount wages and not equal amount of the food that we should have. So that is what Melanie is questioning on us. So now, what conclusion can we draw from this is that we commonly term as housework actually involves many different tasks. A number of these tasks that require heavy physical work. In both rural and urban areas, women and girls, they have to fetch water, which actually requires a heavy physical work, and they also carry heavy head loads of firewood, tasks like washing clothes, cleaning, sweeping, etc. Now, another aspect of housework involves the caregiving that we do not recognize it, as it is very time consuming. What we tend to think, it should come naturally from the woman, but we should also respect this view that caregiving, that we do not recognize it as very time consuming. In fact, if we add up the housework and the work women do outside the home, we find that women spend much more time working than men and have much less time for leisure. So after reading all these cases, all these stories, what we could say that women, they do a lot of hard work and they spend much more time working than men and have much less time for their leisure. Now, below is some data from a special study done by the Central Statistical Organization of India. So what it shares it has mentioned about two states, Tamil Nadu and Haryana, and the dimensions are as below. Work Women paid working hours per week, women unpaid housework house per week, women total, and men paid work hours per week. So we could, if we kind of analyze or draw an analytical view from this data, we could see that men are being much more valued than the women in every terms, right? Now then comes women's work and equality. Women, how the work of women is equated with the equality. There are some questions, so as we have seen, the low value attached to women's household and caregiving work is not an individual or family matter. As we have witnessed that the work that woman does is not literally valued, and even the caregiving work is not paid much attention to it is part of a larger system of inequality between men and women. This actually what leads to inequality between men and women. It therefore has to be dealt with through actions, not just at the level of the individual or the family, but also by the government. So this is where the government should look. Government should actually take an inclusive approach, where it takes the from bottom to the up approach, where it cares for the bottom level people as well. Equality is an important principle of our constitution. We all know the constitution says that being male or female should not become a reason for discrimination, and this is what our equality as a principle led by the constitution says, that men and women, the caste we belong, the gender we possess, it should not be a reason for the discrimination. In reality, inequality becomes the sexes exist. The government is therefore committed to understand the reasons for this and taking positive steps to remedy the situation. And therefore, the government has to look upon such cases and has to really work upon and to find the solution of this situation. For example, the government recognizes that a burden of child care and housework falls on women and girls. This naturally has an impact on whether girls can attend school. Now, our society, our parents since birth teach girls that they should look upon their siblings and they should care for their household works. This actually tends to draw their attention away from the attending the schools, right? It determines whether women can work outside the house and what kind of jobs and careers they can have. So we actually make distinctions between men and women since they are born by providing them different types of toys, by specifying them that what types of dresses they should wear, by specifying them where girls should go and where boys should go. So we are basically making clear distinctions since the birth. But we need to remember that there only exists one difference between the boys and girls, that is biological difference, and biological difference should not lead to the social, cultural, or political differences at all. The government has set up Anganwadis or child care centers in several villages in the country. The government has passed laws that made it mandatory for organizations that have more than 30 women employees to provide facilities. The provision of facilities helps many women to take up employment outside the home. Now, this Anganwadi actually was a good initiative taken by the government since it enhanced the employment opportunities for women, and it also makes it possible for more girls to attend school. And if they are being cared over the school, so it will make girls to attend the schools on a frequently basis. Okay, uh, there are some words which we need to know. So identity is a sense of self awareness who one is. Basically, typically a person can have several identities. For example, a person can be a girl, a sister, and a musician. Basically, identity refers to your own sense of self awareness. How do you see yourself? How do you perceive yourself? Double burden, it means literally means a double load. This term is commonly used to describe the women's work situation. Like women work situation, in what case women's work situation is double burden. They are caring for the household activities as well. They had to care for their children as well. And apart from this, if the women in one of the house are like employed in some of the industries or factories, and they have to balance both of the work. So that is basically double burden. It has emerged from recognition that women typically labor both inside the home and outside the home. Now, caregiving refers to a range of tasks that are related to looking after and nurturing. Basically, caregiving, you give care to the person, you give care to the newborn child. So, looking after and nurturing your younger ones, beside physical tasks, they also involve a strong emotional aspect as well. Devalued means when you do not value some important work, when someone is not given due recognition for a task or job they have done, they can feel devalued. For example, if a boy has put in a lot of effort into making a special birthday gift for his friend, and this friend does not say anything about this, so then the boy may feel devalued. Similarly, in this chapter, the woman's work was actually devalued by not being getting recognitions from the people. Now there are certain questions we will be discussing. So, all societies do not think similarly about the roles that boys and girls play. our society does not make distinction between boys and girls when they're growing up. So to conclude this chapter, we could say that the distinctions between boys and girls are made since birth as well, and that what determines their career and their future.